We spent the past 3 weeks traveling between 5 different cities and 3 different states, and we're even more sure now that we can't go back to living full-time in our home country.
There's a lot to love, but it just doesn't fit our lifestyle anymore. So we're here to tell you all about it. I'm Judy.
And I'm Kevin. Welcome back to Finding Gina Marie, where we share our lives as full-time travelers and the connections we make along the way. Our main reason now to go back to the US is to visit family and friends. We also exchange electronics or swap out clothing, but that really isn't a reason alone to go back to the US.
We are 100% grateful for being American citizens, and we love the fact that our passport allows us to travel so freely everywhere in the world.
It helped us get into France, actually.
Where we are now. We had a lot of family and friends who wanted to know, so you've been traveling for nearly 2 years. When are you going to settle down? Is there some place you're planning to live? Are you planning to come back to the US and retire here? And there are many reasons that we still are even more sure after spending time in the US that it's not a place we want to retire to.
We don't know when we're going to stop traveling, but it won't be anytime soon. We have at least 6 more years of places that we want to visit, and we're not even sure if that's the extensive list. We get suggestions all the time by our viewers. And frankly, even if we burn through that whole list of countries, we're still not going to come back to the US.
There's a lot of reasons for that, and let's go through them all. We'll start off with the cost of living, which is a topic we discussed briefly in our episode last week that you can check out from our link below if you've missed it. But one of the things is that, especially 3 weeks in the US, things are very expensive. It's one of the most expensive places to live in the world. And we found that it blew our budget. We found that we absolutely needed a car everywhere we went. And renting a car, obviously, while we're visiting is expensive. But we were hearing some of the ridiculous prices that people were paying for car insurance, as well as some of the prices for homeowners insurance. If we chose to stay someplace that was more cost effective, it wouldn't be any place that met kind of our primary objectives for places we want to live.
Yeah, we did live in San Francisco for almost 9 years, and the reason we did that was because we wanted an interesting place, a walkable place, a place that we didn't need a car, because we knew how much we were paying for insurance and everything in Texas. So it's like, yeah, let's go ahead and live car-free for a while. And that kind of worked for us. So we understand what reducing some of our costs are, and we want to stay with that. So let's talk about some of our criteria for the places we love in the world.
The United States has some incredible natural wonders, and we love spending time in those places. We've been to Yosemite in California, and Niagara Falls in New York, and the Grand Canyon in Arizona. We've also been to Kentucky and Tennessee, and have enjoyed seeing some of the caves and natural wonders there. But we don't do a lot of hiking per se, and so we don't take advantage of as many of those places, which also span great wide distances and are expensive to travel from one place to another unless you're going to do a road trip, which I don't love doing.
And all the places Judy mentioned are great, and we love visiting them. We love hiking. But if we had to choose between having to travel to a long distance to see these beautiful wonders, or being able to wander around a city to see beautiful architecture, history, and culture, we'd choose the latter. For example, when we're in Italy, we can wander through a city like Rome, and you're basically being transported back in time every step of the way. You're just wandering past things that are thousands of years old, and you don't have to get in a car to go see that. We love the different things we stumble across in these cities. The culture is amazing. The architecture is stunning. And that's what really excites us.
We have family in Houston and in Austin, and it took 3.5 hours to get to Austin. However, if we're in another country, we can take that same 3 hours and be in many other cities in that amount of time, and also be in another country if we want to explore more, and have a completely different cultural experience than just going from one city to another in the US.
And because it's not always by plane, sometimes it's just a train ride or a bus ride, it opens up our options. And again, we're not owning a car to do it, or even renting one.
Some of our favorite activities are to go to museums and check out theaters and learning about history and culture, which are very easy to do in places like Europe and Asia and Southeast Asia, but are much harder to do if you are living outside a big city in the US, where it can be very expensive.
Outside the US, Smaller cities have a lot to offer, including places like Turin, Italy, where they have the oldest Egyptian museum in the world. You would think that'd be in Egypt, but it's in Italy. And let's talk about healthcare costs. Healthcare in the US is really expensive, and a lot of people have gone bankrupt because they can't afford the medical costs for a disease or some healthcare need, or just prescription drugs. So we're looking for places that are going to make that lower for us. We want to live in a country that reduces the need for insurance and makes healthcare a little bit easier. We're also looking at the scheduling of healthcare. When we were in the US, sometimes it would take weeks and months to schedule something. And when I was in Serbia, I had scheduled and was in recovery for hernia surgery in 24 hours. That's unheard of. And our cost for that wasn't very high at all. So this is the kind of focus that we have for healthcare.
We know that everyone has their own stories about how certain countries take so long and everybody comes to the United States to get healthcare, but we've also found it works equally well the other way around. We had full medical checkups in Thailand and it worked out great for us.
Yeah.
San Francisco was great because we didn't need to own a car, but the cost of living in that city is obviously very high. Now, any place that has a walkable city in the US is likewise equally expensive. So if you're living in a smaller place, it practically guarantees that you're going to need to own a car, which involves crazy car insurance payments and the cost of gasoline and maintenance. Those are all big expenses that we don't have to incur when we're living outside the US.
And even something as simple as groceries, which we'll talk about in a little bit, it's just more expensive in the US to buy them.
And they're not always as healthy for you.
And at the heart of all this, it really is about travel, which we love to do. The reason we're traveling full-time is because that's what we are enjoying. We're enjoying finding out more about other places in the world, culture, and travel from the US is just really expensive. The only countries near us are Canada and Mexico.
So even if eventually we want to have a home base somewhere, we recognize that living somewhere outside of the US makes it so much easier to explore other parts of the world more affordably.
And as we've hinted to earlier, when you travel in the US, you're traveling to other states and beautiful places. But when you're traveling in Europe, it's so quick and easy to get to another country or just to another city. So that kind of immediate travel is always there at our fingertips. And we've gotten pretty addicted to it.
Right, and it's not just Europe. We found the same in Asia and Southeast Asia, and we're going to be heading to South America soon, and that's going to be a similar experience as well. One of the things that shocked us when we were in the US was how many foods you can get in the grocery stores. It's just astounding. And in some ways, it's a really nice perk because boy, have I been missing peanut butter and it's been everywhere. But at the same time, you're not always getting the freshest ingredients or in-season ingredients. You can buy foods any time of year that you desire. Whereas in other parts of the world, they really do restrict what you can buy to what they can get locally. So you're naturally eating the freshest fruits and vegetables possible. You're also not dealing with things that have been overly processed or have a bunch of chemicals on them. Of course, you can eat organic food in the US as well. I do think that trusting food in the US is a bit trickier than in other places.
Yeah, just think about when you go out to eat in the US. How much extra sugar or salt is in these meals? How much food is processed versus how much food is local? How can you get seafood in the middle of the country when the coastlines aren't anywhere near it? You know, all the things that we buy in Europe or Southeast Asia or other parts of the world seem to be locally sourced. They just seem to be free of any kind of processing. I just feel better when I'm eating in someplace, whether it's groceries or from a market or from a restaurant. I don't know, I get done with a meal and I just feel lighter and healthier. Our trip through the US these past 3 weeks, I just felt slower and slower as we were moving through it.
I know, definitely you've had fewer issues outside the US when you consume dairy, for one thing. And I know that there are a lot of foods that are processed that are prohibited in other parts of the world that are available in the US, which is a little concerning.
Definitely.
And while I understand that it is up to you as an individual consumer, it's a lot easier in the US to be eating junk food and fast food than we've found in other places. I feel like the foods are just healthier and you have to work a lot harder to go to a fast food place.
Yeah, there are fast food places in every country, but like Judy said, it's so much easier to avoid them because there are local restaurants and there are a lot of markets and there are a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. One of the ways of staying fit and healthy is with daily exercise. When we lived in the Woodlands, Texas, we didn't go anywhere by foot. We went on walking trails with our dog to make sure that she got her daily walks, but we never went anywhere else by just a casual walk. We got in a car, we drove to a shopping plaza, we drove to a mall, we drove everywhere.
And it's not just because we were lazy and that's what we wanted to do. Nothing was close enough by for us to walk there. So by virtue of distance, that's what we did this whole trip when we were visiting family. And we definitely felt like we walked a ton in Madrid, and then we came to the US and we had to drive everywhere. In the course of 3 weeks, you drove over 1,400 miles.
Yeah.
And that wasn't including the fact that San Francisco, we didn't have to drive.
It's true.
So defaulting to walking means that we don't always have to pay for an expensive gym membership because that's no fun.
And walking is just what people do in these major cities and even the smaller cities in Europe. So you end up just doing it. It's not like you have to make a conscious effort to say, we should go out and get a walk. It's just the lifestyle.
One of the questions that people kept asking is, don't you just want to own something small in the US and then travel from here? And we feel strongly that the answer is a resounding no. Part of it is because there's so much consumerism in the US and it's very easy to get dragged back into that.
Yeah, we've done that for years when we owned homes and even when we rented apartments. We bought stuff to make sure our home was comfortable. Things we like to do around the house. We see something we want to add or something we want to buy. It just came along with the package.
And I feel like the more stuff you have, the more tied down you are, which means, at least for us when we were younger, we were focused on creating a lovely home for ourselves and not as much on traveling. We've done the home projects, we've done renovations, we've done the puttering around, and we just don't want to do those kinds of things anymore. I think it's just easy to want more stuff because that's what everybody else around you is doing.
And when we're traveling, we don't think about having stuff as much. It's not the way we live anymore. A little bit because we're full-time travelers, which means we only have carry-on suitcases and backpacks. So that eliminates carrying anything else. But the thought of settling down, even if we bought a home somewhere in the world outside of the US, the idea of collecting more stuff and being connected to that or controlled by it. You know, we don't want things to control us anymore. We don't want to have to live and say, oh, we can't do that because our stuff is here. And that's what made it really hard to move out of San Francisco. We had so much stuff, after years of consolidating, it owned us. We had to work really hard to break away. So our final thoughts, we don't hate the US. We loved every moment we spent there and every stage of our lives. But we don't want to return to corporate America. We don't want to get caught in consumerism. We don't want to go back to that cycle of what we had before.
We know there are a lot of affordable places elsewhere in the world that we'd love to spend time and learn more about. So we don't necessarily feel like we need to come back to the United States to create a new home for ourselves.
This is our retirement. This is the time we get to do exactly what we want to do. Frankly, we can't see why we go back to the US at this point when we have so much to do and so much to explore in the rest of the world.
How about you? Is living outside the US permanently something that you've ever considered? Or if not the US, then your home country? We'd love to know in the comments. We hope this video has given you some food for thought. And if you're not already subscribed, we hope you do so.
Check out findingginaread.com where you can find articles, more information about us, and our community forum.
Until next time.
Until next time.